This video describes an incident that happened in 2010 when President Obama failed to name an ambassador acceptable to President Chavez. This slide has a photo of the American Embassy in Caracas and the Venezuelan Embassy in Washington, D.C., and for many years the countries exchanged ambassadors. Now, there is a requirement that an ambassador be acceptable to the receiving country. That's what diplomatic relations require. It was set up and codified in the Vienna Convention in 1961. The host country has the right to reject an ambassador's appointment. It's not a done deal until the host country says, yes, this ambassador is acceptable to come to our country and represent your country. So here's the two ambassadors that represented the United States. Patrick Duddy was the ambassador to Venezuela, and Bernardo Alvarez was the ambassador from Venezuela in Washington, D.C. Here's a photo of Duddy with President Hugo Chavez of Venezuela, and they talk to one another on a regular basis, but Duddy's term of service was going to end on July 10, 2010. So President Obama nominated Larry Palmer to replace Duddy, and he was going to, he had a PhD in education. He had served as the ambassador to Honduras 2002 to 2005, and he was currently, at that time, 2010, president of the Inter-American Foundation. I have to mention the role of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in ambassador appointments. In 2010, John Kerry, Democrat of Massachusetts, was chairman, and Richard Lugar was the ranking Republican from Indiana. And what the Senate Foreign Relations Committee does, it holds hearings to assess the qualifications of an ambassador nominee, and then votes to recommend it or oppose the nomination from the president. And then the full Senate has to vote to confirm or reject the nominee. So there are steps that have to go through in the Senate before an ambassador is actually confirmed to be the representative of the United States. So Larry Palmer testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on July 27th, and his testimony was just fine. It was non-controversial. President Hugo Chavez from Venezuela said, yes, he's acceptable to be the ambassador from the United States. Now, to mention Senator Lugar from Indiana, he was highly critical of Obama's overtures to Venezuela, and he advocated for a tougher U.S. policy, particularly toward President Chavez. He felt that Obama was being weak in dealing with Chavez, and so he was a Republican critic of Obama's policies. So what Lugar asked was for Palmer to respond in writing to questions. And so Palmer's answers were presumed to be for senators and not for the public. But a week after Palmer sent those answers to Lugar's office, they were posted on Lugar's website. And then they were also posted on an independent Venezuelan website. What were Palmer's answers? What he said was he had some very negative things to say about Venezuela. He said morale in Venezuela's army is considerably low. The U.S. could take advantage. Clear ties between Venezuelan government and Colombian guerrillas deemed to be terrorists. The National Guard is involved in narcotics trafficking. The Venezuelan government has violated human rights, limited freedom of press, and imprisoned judges for simply ruling against Chavez. Well, President Chavez saw these answers, and he declared Palmer was simply unacceptable, that he's disqualified himself, and rudely insulting the fundamental institutions of Venezuela. So Chavez appealed to Obama to send someone else. He felt and determined that Palmer was unacceptable because of these answers to be the ambassador. Now, this was evaluated by diplomats and people who had studied diplomatic relations. And as you can see in this comment from a professor at Tufts University, the publication of such comments, considered demeaning by the host country, is unusual. People usually don't publish those kind of answers. Many countries would not accept as ambassador someone who made such comments like Palmer did. So this was not unusual for a host country to reject an applicant like this. What's unusual is that the comments were made public in the first place. And so basically, President Obama was caught in a political bind. The Lugar questions to Palmer and leaks of the answer were seen as a setup from the critics on the right. And what could the Obama administration do? By withdrawing Palmer, submitting another candidate that would appear to be weak, particularly with regard to President Chavez. They couldn't refute itself and reject their candidate and maintain any credibility. So Obama was caught in a political bind. One of the first things that the administration did was to revoke the Venezuela's visa for the ambassador to stay in the United States. Well, Alvarez had been out of the country when it was revoked, so he couldn't re-enter. And the State Department made it pretty clear why we were revoking the ambassador's visa, because Chavez had rejected Larry Palmer. So there haven't been any ambassadors from the United States or Venezuela since 2010. That may be changing in the near future, but it's 2026 now, and there haven't been ambassadors between the two countries since 2010 for the last 15 years. And Obama simply did not nominate anyone else to be ambassador to Venezuela. He never withdrew Palmer's nomination. Palmer was never voted on by the Senate or the Foreign Relations Committee. He just failed to nominate a candidate who was acceptable to Venezuela. So all of the information to document this incident is available in a blog post on the blog, The Venezuela Reader.